Hello, gang, and welcome in. It is the Matt Murphy Radio Show underway for another day. It's just past high noon, 12:05 to be precise. Thank you for being with us on this Wednesday, November 8th, 2023. It is our episode 451 of the proceedings. Allow me, if you will, to get the pleasantries out of the way, and we'll let you know what's going on in your world during the Libertarian Lunch and beyond. Our telephone numbers are available to you if you choose to use them at any point during the proceedings. 615-737-9986, 615-737-WWTN. That's the way to communicate with the show directly. You can also utilize the super text line and hit us up over there. And it is a much appreciated and valuable resource on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Obviously, Bell K is a resource. He is making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as humanly possible. He's behind the glass, turning the knobs, screening your telephone calls, and choosing not to be on Supertalk TV, although he tells you what the title of the episode is on a daily basis. Supertalk TV is up and running. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. There's so many different ways where you can consume this product, right? We want you to take us wherever you go, right? From when you first wake up in the morning until you go to beddy-bye at night. I want you to have WTN on your side. And I know that's a hard lift. That's a difficult ask. But you know what? It's free. So why wouldn't you do that? So you can join us on a streaming platform of your choosing. That would be any streaming platform of your choosing. Just type in Supertalk 99.7 WTN, and you can stream the show live. You can also watch us on Supertalk TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. We're available there where the F&M Bank chat line is up and running. And that episode today of the Matt Murphy Radio portion of the broadcast day is entitled
Matt Murphy. His opinion may change, but he'll still be right.
That's true.
The Libertarian Lunch, noon to 3, taco salad.
You got a little taco salad in there?
Got a little taco salad.
Good for you. The redheaded stranger, I call her now because we haven't seen her in a while, is in for Brian Wilson this afternoon, and she invited me to partake in some taco salad. I chose not to. Although I take that back. I just saw the text too late. Otherwise, I probably would have partaken.
Should have jumped on it.
I would have jumped on that just like you did. But you enjoy that. You enjoy your lunchtime. I'll enjoy imparting some knowledge to you as we get through the lunch hour together on to the 1 o'clock hour. In the lunch hour at 12:35, Congressman Andy Ogles will be with us to talk about his desire to kind of zone in or hone in on this conflict between Israel and Hamas. We will discuss that with Andy coming up in just about 30 minutes. Hamas leaders, we now know, are worth Hamas leadership. They don't live in Gaza. They live in Qatar. And while their people languish in poverty and are treated like human shields, the leadership of Hamas live billionaire lifestyles, literally billionaire lifestyles. The terrorist group has 3 top individuals in leadership, and their top 3 leaders alone are worth $11 billion. So don't talk to me about Israel's responsibility in all of this until you talk about the responsibility of the leadership that politically and otherwise runs that region of the world. Our own Congressman Andy Ogles is co-sponsoring a bill that would strip Qatar of its status as a key U.S. ally based on the fact that they allow the Hamas leadership to live in Qatar unless and until it kicks the Hamas leadership out of their country. The terrorist organization, which is obviously responsible for the death of over 1,400 people, and I would also say they are responsible for every single Palestinian death that has ensued since then. Every single one currently has over 200 hostages in the Gaza region, hostages that must be released until, we should not talk about any sort of ceasefire until such time as the hostages are released. So we have that going on at 12:35. Scott Sapicki, Representative Sapicki, will stop by briefly in the 1 o'clock hour to tell us where we are on either accepting or rejecting federal education money in the state of Tennessee. If you did not know, Republican leadership and the Republican supermajority in the Tennessee General Assembly is considering turning down over $1 billion in federal money, something that I frankly applaud. It's High time that some of our states began turning down this money. It always has strings attached to it. And secondarily, this is money that is borrowed against the futures of our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. We will discuss in the 1 o'clock hour. Cameron Smith will be here for a bit of crossfire with the Republican establishment. That's coming up at 2:05 this afternoon. Your telephone calls and your super text throughout the day, 615-737-9986. Speaking of the redheaded stranger, she sent me a link, and I'll give her a hat tip on it, to a news article from WSMV News Channel 4. This has to do with the suspect that is currently in custody for the shooting of a Belmont student. I'll read the article and give you my take on what's going on here. This has everything to do with the discussion that we have been having these many months since the Covenant School shooting about what, if anything, we could do to identify individuals that are going through mental health trauma as a result of a variety of different environmental impacts or society, whatever it might be. If you're going through a mental health crisis that leads you to be in immediate danger to yourself or to other people, you need to get that help. That's what we talk about when we talk about health care in the state of Tennessee and around the United States of America, or mental health when it comes to mass shootings. Well, the man accused of critically injuring, and I guess he did not kill, but critically injuring a Belmont freshman yesterday. You've heard us reporting on Super Talk 99.7 WTN out of the newsroom. Ken Weaver, Mac Morey, both have been all over this story, where a Belmont freshman was critically injured. Well, that man that is accused of injuring that Belmont freshman was released from custody in May after doctors determined that he was not competent to stand trial. Here's the backstory. According to WSMV, in April, the Nashville District Attorney's Office prosecuted 29-year-old Shaquille Taylor on an aggravated assault charge with a deadly weapon. At a competency hearing, 3 doctors unanimously testified that Taylor was incompetent to stand trial, according to Nashville District Attorney Glenn Funk. Speaking of incompetent, Funk, in a statement released today, said state and federal law prohibit prosecution of persons to be found incompetent. Therefore, Judge Angelita Dalton was mandated to dismiss the case. What? Because the doctors did not find Mr. Taylor met the standards for involuntarily confining him, he was released from custody May 19th of 2023. Months later, he is now accused of shooting an 18-year-old by the name of Jillian Ludwig, who was shot on the track at Edge Hill Community Memorial Gardens Park yesterday afternoon. According to police, Taylor was shooting at a car when a bullet hit Ludwig in the head. Police found Ludwig at about 3:30 in the afternoon, an hour after she was shot. I may have said he, and I apologize. Jillian is a she, obviously. So the story goes that officers then began searching the area for evidence. Witnesses found 6 .40 caliber cartridge casings on 13th Court near 14th Avenue South. Surveillance video then showed that Taylor fired several rounds toward a dark sedan, ultimately hitting Ludwig. Police arrested Taylor and charged him with aggravated assault and tampering with evidence. Ludwig is not expected to survive. Taylor remains jailed in lieu of $280,000 bond. Taylor had been arrested on September 21st after police allegedly spotted him driving a carjacked F-150. Let us dissect this story. So you have an individual, Shaquille Taylor, who was arrested September 21st, driving a carjacked F-150. Is that September 21st of this year? So this is an individual who has multiple interactions with law enforcement. Explain to me on what planet this makes sense from the Nashville District Attorney's Office. We arrested him in April. We prosecuted him for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. 3 doctors testified that Taylor was incompetent to stand a trial. So we let him go? Only to carjack an F-150 and eventually shoot at another vehicle, hitting a bystander in the head, and that bystander is expected to die. So Ludwig's blood is on the hands of everyone involved in this case. Most importantly, on the hands of Taylor himself. So are you following the timeline here? Am I describing it adequately to you? You had an individual that was accused of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon in custody. And according to our district attorney, Glenn Funk, who by all accounting is absolutely useless, especially considering that he's blaming everyone else on it. So you're telling me in our system of justice that if someone is found incompetent to stand a trial, that there is not justification to involuntarily confine them to a mental facility? According to Glenn Funk, you just have to let them go. If this story is to be believed, according to Nashville District Attorney Glenn Funk, 3 doctors unanimously testified that Taylor was incompetent to stand trial. Funk, in a statement, quote, "State and federal law prohibit prosecution of persons found to be incompetent. So therefore, Judge Angelita Dalton was mandated to dismiss the case. Because doctors did not find Mr. Taylor met the standards for involuntarily commitment, he was released from custody May 19th. So you just had to let him go? Am I the only one angry about this? There's a person that is expected to die as a result of the incompetence of everyone involved in this case. Most directly, the judge and the DA. You couldn't figure out some other way to get this guy confined because he was a threat to our community? No, what I think happened is you just decided to let him go to get him off the docket because doctors found him incompetent to stand a trial. Should that not be automatic? You assault someone. So you assaulted someone with a deadly weapon. A doctor says this guy's crazy or this guy's incompetent or this guy doesn't have the mental ability to understand the charges against him. That should automatically mean that you get involuntarily confined in a mental facility. But not in this case. According to Glenn Funk, state and federal law prohibit the prosecution of persons found to be incompetent. Yet doctors said, how in the world can you say that someone is incompetent to stand a trial, but it is perfectly okay with those same doctors that that person walk out of a courtroom back into society? In the meantime, we have a lot of Democrats and a lot of others in our community that are suggesting that we take away law-abiding citizens' rights because some people abuse those rights for their own purposes and violate the law through that abuse. What I'm talking about is there are people that want to take away my right to self-defense, my right to carry a weapon, my right to carry a gun, more specifically, because other people abuse that and violate the rights of other people. While we're focused on that, you've got people in the system charged with aggravated assault that just walk. And the district attorney, at least according to his statement, Well, nothing we could do. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? 615-737-9986. Any thoughts on this matter? It is unbelievable that this is going on in Davidson County in Nashville, Tennessee. Someone gets arrested for aggravated assault. They get put in jail, and the prosecution throws their hands up and says, hey, they said that he was incompetent to stand trial. Well, okay, did you commit him to a mental facility? No, the same doctors that said he was incompetent to stand trial said that he didn't meet the standards for involuntary commitment, so we had to let him go. So you just let him go? So the crime that he committed against someone just goes away? There you go, criminals. In Davidson County with Glenn Funk as DA, you just act a little crazy and you walk. Is that the way it goes? 615-737-9986. We'll get to your calls momentarily. Unbelievable story breaking earlier today. Thank you to WSMV Television, and thank you to Pamela Furr for alerting me on this story. It's 1221 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. You know, the holidays are upon us, friends. It's November. Before you know it, Thanksgiving, then Christmas. That means a lot of eating. Let's talk about weight loss right here and right now. Might seem an odd time of year to do it, but PhD Weight Loss wants you to get ahead of the holidays by calling them and going ahead and scheduling that appointment. You know you want to lose the weight. Don't give up on the last 2 months of the year. That happens with a lot of folks who are invested in weight loss, where they feel like, well, November, there's Thanksgiving, there's a lot of folks over, and then December, and that's Christmas, and that's a lot of eating. I'll just start in January. Don't give up these 2 months. You can lose a lot of weight in these 2 months. I know, because I've lost over 35 pounds, thank you to the PhD Weight Loss System, and I know that you can lose the weight as well. The average guy loses between 3 and 5 pounds a week. The average female between 2 and 3 pounds a week. They get you on a plan, and if you don't get within 5 pounds of your target weight by the end of your program, they continue to coach you for free until you do. That is the PhD guarantee. Go to myphdweightloss.com to find out more information. That's myphdweightloss.com. And get in front of the holidays with My PhD Weight Loss. myphdweightloss.com. Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy. I am proud to talk with you about the Special Operators Transition Foundation, which provides the most tailored veterans transition program for top-tier special operation leaders to strengthen America's best businesses. In other words, it takes top veterans and pairs them with top businesses. The goal is to align civilian careers with the strengths and career goals of those who come out of their military training. The SOTF, I should say, began with a simple question presented at a celebration dinner with members of a Navy SEAL team. What's next for you guys? Well, if you don't know, then let's get to know. Leadership is made right here in America through our United States military, and through the SOTF, you can find leaders to join your team. What we need from you? Well, look, if you're looking to hire, a business looking to hire upper elite management with skill sets that you find in the military, then I want you to think about hiring operators out of the SOTF program. You can also host a transition workshop and donate. They are a 501c3. Donations are what is funded, or what funds, I should say, the Special Operators Transition Foundation. Find out more at their website. It's SOTF.org. That's SOTF.org. And in advance of Veterans Day, think about hiring a veteran. Thank you to the Special Operators Transition Foundation. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. A lot of reaction to this story breaking this hour regarding a shooting that happened yesterday right off the campus of Belmont. Nashville District Attorney Glenn Funk issued a statement saying that Shaquille Taylor had been released from custody earlier this year after three separate court-appointed doctors found him incompetent to stand trial. Taylor had been charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon April of 2023. Then in September, he was arrested for an alleged carjacking. He was charged with felony auto theft and released on a $20,000 bond. Police say he never showed up to his court date last week. Of course he didn't. Of course he didn't. On yesterday afternoon, 18-year-old Jillian Ludwig was walking on the track in Edge Hill Community Memorial Gardens Park when she was shot in the head. She remains in extremely critical condition, and according to authorities, she is not expected to survive. This young woman deserved better. This young woman deserved better from our court system. She deserved better from the district attorney. She deserved better from every single member of this community, and I'm wondering if you're not as mad as I am about this. Detectives eventually developed information in the shooting that led to the arrest of Taylor. He's now charged with aggravated assault and evidence tampering. He's being held on $200. Why does he have any bond at all? He walked from the other stolen property. Why does he have a $280,000 bond? Why does he have a bond at all? He escaped punishment for the aggravated assault last spring. He stole a car. He didn't show up after stealing a car and posting bond. Why for the life of me, am I the only one? According to Funk, under Tennessee law, for a person to be involuntarily committed to a mental health facility, at least two doctors must have executed certificates that the person is suffering from a severe mental illness or developmental disability that causes the person to be a substantial risk of serious harm to himself or others. The doctors must also find that there is no other less restrictive measures than commitment. Here's what I want. If I can get any retroactive justice, then based on that assessment, the doctors that evaluated Taylor are garbage doctors and need to be fired, because clearly he was a danger to other people. Clearly he was a danger to this community, and you said he wasn't. So you need to be fired.
That's what I don't understand is he commits an act of assault showing that he is a dangerous person, but then they decide that he's not dangerous.
Apparently. Under Tennessee law, this sounds like a bunch of garbage excuse-making on the part of the DA and everyone else involved. And I'm sick of it. When we have some of these shootings, Everybody wants to run to the law-abiding citizens and demand that you give up your guns. And we talk about mental health, and we don't do anything about it. More coming up from David and Judy and Barry. I do have Andy Ogles on the way at 12:35 this afternoon as well. It is 12:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy, and I want to talk with you for a moment about Paul Winkler and his team of professionals. When it comes to investment and financial planning, Paul is who I turn to for help and guidance. We talk a lot about the crazy things going on in Washington, D.C. on a day-to-day basis around here with tax laws changing, bank failures happening, changes in retirement. It's hard to know who to trust to help you make good financial decisions. When I first started working several years ago at WTN, I interviewed several financial firms, and I picked Paul Winkler and his team. One, I heard Paul Winkler on the weekends on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Two, what stood out to me is that they act as a fiduciary or in the client's best interest. In fact, even when I do these commercials, I tell you that I'm paid to say nice things about Paul because they act under the law. It's legal for me to do that. Another thing that's unusual is that they don't work for a big bank. They don't work for a mutual fund company. They don't work for a broker or a dealer. They work for you. Their approach is based on decades of academic research, and I strongly encourage you to set up a 15-minute conversation with Paul Winkler and his team. Go to paulwinkler.com. That's paulwinkler.com, or call 615-851-1950. 615-851-1950 for Paul Winkler. Hello, friends. Matt Murphy here for Craft Body Scan. First off, did you know that November is Healthy Lung Awareness Month? It is. And if you've ever smoked, even if it was years ago, and I'm counting myself in this number, if you've ever had a cigarette to your lips, then you know that you worry maybe about what that has done to your health. Well, if November is Lung Cancer Awareness Month, doesn't that mean that it's a great time for you to, well, become more aware of whether or not you have an issue by getting to Craft Body Scan? My friends at Craft Body Scan want to help you with a heart and lung scan for just $149. Normally, these full CT scans are valued at about $1,300 per person per scan. The scan takes only about 5 minutes. It can detect even the slightest irregularity. For me, it gave me complete peace of mind because although I had quit smoking many, many years ago. I wanted to know if it had done any permanent damage in my body, and thankfully it has not. I got that level of peace of mind. I want you to have it too. Go to craftbodyscan.com. That's craft with a C, bodyscan.com, or call 615-436-1000, 615-436-1000 for our friends at Craft Body Scan. All right, it's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I will get to your calls momentarily regarding a shooting that happened yesterday in the Edge Hill community that has a lot of people scratching their heads as to why the suspected shooter was out in the first place. He was incarcerated on aggravated assault charges last April. The DA, Glenn Funk, says he had to let him go because doctors evaluated him and found him incompetent to stand trial, leading many of us to wonder, then why was he not incarcerated in a mental health facility? Funk says, well, we couldn't do that because the law wouldn't allow us to do that. So the law says you can't prosecute him for aggravated assault, but you can't hold him? Doesn't make a lot of sense. We're going to get back to that story in a moment. Right now, we tilt to Washington, D.C. Congressman Andy Ogles joins us on the Matt Murphy hotline to talk about activity going on there, to include the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Andy, good afternoon. Hope you're well.
Absolutely. Obviously, our prayers go out to the family. That shooting is horrible, and obviously, hopefully, at this point, justice can be done. But that never is, that doesn't replace a life that's been lost.
Well, no, and we certainly need to look on the state level into shoring up some of our involuntary incarceration laws that would put these people in a mental health facility if they are deemed not able to stand trial. And this guy slipped through the cracks. It's just a bad situation all the way around. Yeah. Speaking of bad situations, Andy, obviously a horrible situation for the Israeli people in the aftermath of the October 7th terrorist attack against them. I so appreciate you taking a stand along with several of your members in the House of Representatives against the leadership of Hamas. It seems that many in mainstream media have forgotten that Hamas is not just a terrorist organization, but they are also the leaders, quote unquote, if you will, of Gaza. They are the political leaders, although they don't live in Gaza. Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing about it.
Yeah, so we've had, or I've had, along with some of my colleagues, a multi kind of pronged approach at protecting our homeland from, quite frankly, a Palestinian invasion by way of asylum and visas and so forth. So we've had the Gaza Act to prevent the Palestinians from coming here. We've got a bill that protects, the secretary from giving them a temporary protected status. We have a bill that is prohibiting money going to Hamas in the form of quote unquote aid because we know it's not getting there. Then we just sent a letter to Qatar ambassador saying, look, if you're truly our ally, which they have special ally status, is you shouldn't be harboring known terrorists in your countries. With these guys, they're worth several $1 billion. So you have these billionaires living in Qatar, or Qatar, as you would say in Arabic, and they're directing, these attacks on the Israelis and trying to get people into our own country, and they're sheltered by someone who's supposed to be our ally. Well, if you're ally, it's time for you to act like it. It's time for you to kick those people out of your country so they can be, stand trial for the terrorist attack on the Israeli homeland. And so that's what we're trying to do by going on offense, because if we allow these people into our country, that puts us at risk. And it should be noted that Jordan does not want the Palestinian people. Egypt does not want the Palestinian people. The Kuwaitis a few years ago, deported large numbers of Palestinians because they are a radicalized people. And so obviously our prayers continue to be with the people of Israel, and quite frankly, into Blinken, who's saying that, the Israeli government has no right for long-term occupation of Gaza. That's not for us to say. That's for the Israeli people and the Israeli government to say, and it's time that this administration stop meddling in Israeli foreign policy.
Well, I applaud you and your colleagues in the House recognizing that Hamas leadership is the central problem in that arena, not Israeli leadership, obviously, and the Israelis are reacting, not acting in an aggressive fashion in that region. Hamas leadership are the ones that are acting, and I appreciate you laying the blame and pointing the finger at Qatar. I mean, They need to bear some responsibility in harboring what we consider to be a terrorist organization. How is that? I mean, I know I'm asking the wrong person here, Andy, because you're fighting the good fight now. But how has this been going on for so long that Qatar's our friends? We consider them a, quote, key U.S. ally, yet we allow them to allow Hamas leadership, a terrorist organization, to live this lavish lifestyle in their country.
Well, so we have a forward operating base in Qatar, and so our government has kind of looked the other way when, on frequent occasion, Qatar has been a bad actor where they've undermined us. They've quite frankly, indirectly or at times directly, facilitated terrorism around the world. And so it's time for us to call them out for what they are. Yes, they're a strategic partner, but if you're going to be an ally, if you're going to have that kind of special status for the United States of America, we need you to act like it 24/7. And we recognize that you live in a bad neighborhood. Okay, I get it. But at the same token, you have known terrorists living within your borders who are actively pursuing killing our true ally, Israel. And the atrocities that were committed, things that we can't really talk about on air, what they did to women, what they did to children, and what they did to babies, you would get censored probably get fined if we talked about it in great detail. And yet here they are, they're allowed to live, allowed to operate, they're allowed to have their Lamborghinis and their fancy cars and to fly on private jets, and they move around with impunity, and we know where they're at, we know where they live. And again, we need our ally to send a signal to terrorists in that region that it will not be tolerated. Look, we can have differences of faith. We can have differences of opinion. We can disagree over borders and such. But when you're harboring terrorists that are literally day in and day out trying to kill Israelis, trying to kill Europeans, and trying to kill Americans, we need to call a spade. And that's what I did with my letter to the ambassador. That's what I've been doing, because most of these if you will, Hamas pieces of legislation I have authored and sponsored, and rally my colleagues to come on board with me. And so it's an honor to serve the 5th District, but this is a serious situation. We've caught almost 1,000 people from Iran and Syria trying to come into our country. You've had people with this current administration testify before committee over the last 2 weeks saying we have known terror cells operating in the United States, that there have been assassination attempts on U.S. soil here, targeting Americans. And so we've got to go on offense. We've got to get rid of these people. We've got to get them out of our country, and we've got to stop them from coming here.
So where's the bill now, and do you expect that it will get to the floor of the House?
Well, in the short term, because of the appropriations process, no, but that is something that we're going to advocate for as we continue to move forward.
Right.
So part of this is you put it up there, you have the conversations, you force the conversations, quite frankly, and hopefully in doing so, even if we can't get these bills passed in formal form, if you will, we can move the administration, because you have the House of Representatives and our colleagues in the Senate saying, look, if you don't take action, if you don't correct course, we're going to do it on your behalf. And so hopefully we continue to move the needle, point this out to the administration, and let them know, quite frankly, that we're not going to tolerate it. We do have funding mechanisms that we're going to be, debating over the next couple of months. We'll have a short-term continuing resolution that will get us through Christmas, but then we still have to fund the rest of the year. And so that's when we'll have the true opportunity to force the hand of the Biden administration.
Oftentimes the devil's in the details as to what happens in Washington, D.C., and I had to remind our listening audience of that last week when Rashida Tlaib escaped censure based on some of the language involved in the Marjorie Taylor Greene effort to censure Representative Tlaib. Last night, the House of Representatives did, in fact, censure Representative Tlaib in a vote of 234 to 188. I just wanted you an opportunity to offer your thoughts on why that was an important measure for the House of Representatives, considering some of her incendiary language.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I believe in free speech, of course, but when your speech as a member of Congress is calling for violence and it's calling for the elimination of the people of Israel and the state of Israel, that's a step way too far. You can't yell fire in the theater in the same way you can't say the things that she's been saying. I did vote for Marjorie Taylor Greene's censure resolution. It was not worded in a way that quite frankly was ideal, so it ultimately failed on the House floor. A good friend of mine, Rich McCormick out of Georgia, took that censure resolution, quite frankly, worked with the parliamentarian, the intel, worked with the Freedom Caucus. We drafted it in a way that would be very careful with the language so that we weren't guilty of making accusations on the House floor that we couldn't prove. And because of that, because it was thoughtfully drafted, and kudos to my buddy, McCormick, that we were able to get it passed. We worked together, and the rest is history. But again, if you or I were to make similar comments in the public space, we would be condemned. But because she's a Democrat and she's, one of the squad, she gets away with more than she should. So this was an important step to say, look, yes, freedom of speech, but you went way, way too far. And again, I go back to the Israeli people have a right to choose their destiny. You've got to remember, back in the early 2000s, there was a land for peace deal with the Palestinians. Well, guess what? 20 years later, we don't have peace. The Israelis live under day in and day out threat of attacks from the from the Gaza Strip. And that obviously culminated into this terrorist attack that took place just a few short weeks ago. And so now what happens next is because of the Palestinian government. It's because of Hamas. They have brought this down on themselves, and it's time for them to pay the price.
Congressman Andy Ogles, thank you, as always, for spending a bit of time with us, describing in detail your activities in Washington, D.C., and the broader picture up there. We appreciate you. Come see us when you're home, okay?
Absolutely. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, no problem. There's Andy Ogles joining us for a few moments discussing his co-sponsorship of a resolution that would end a favored nation status or ally status with Qatar or Qatar. I know I've heard it both ways. I say Qatar, some say Qatar. Or do I say Qatar and some say Qatar? I can't remember now.
Tomato.
But they should not have any sort of favored nation status if they're going to harbor terrorists. And if we know where the terrorists are, I don't care how much money they make. We need to go and get them and deal with them.
He threw you off when he called you buddy, didn't he?
A little. I'm still not used to it.
I know.
I'm not used to I communicated with Andy last night. I said, hey, can you come on and talk to us about this thing tomorrow? He said, sure, I'll be happy to. Just let me figure out a time. I'm not used to all of that. I'm not used to all. Now, if I can get a call back from Mark Green, it'll be great.
Who?
Exactly. I love Mark Green. Congressman Green's very busy on the southern border situation, and it's a little more difficult to get him during the lunchtime. It is 1247, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So in addition to conversations about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, obviously we're going to get into the results of some of the elections that happened. I'm very curious to talk to Kentucky people. I don't pretend to know what happened in Kentucky. And I don't begrudge others who have perhaps studied it more than me, but something that I've learned over my 25 years, and it took me a long time before I spit this bit. If I don't know about something with enough authority to be able to discuss it with a level of expertise, either admit that on the front end or don't talk about it at all. And so I don't know what Andy Bashir, is it Bashir or Bashirs? Is he plural? It's Bashir.
I've heard, yeah.
I think it's Bashir.
Singular.
I think it's singular, too. I mean, I have an article about him right up here. I could just look at the article. I don't pretend to understand the appeal of Andy Bashir.
Well, you have to remember, this is the same state that keeps reelecting Mitch McConnell. So,
but it's also the same state that elects Rand Paul. This is what I don't understand. What are you, Kentucky? The hell are you? You elect Rand Paul, yay. Mitch McConnell, boo. Republican-led legislature, yay. Andy Bashir, boo. The hell are you? You're bipolar, Kentucky. Pick a damn lane. I mean, at least I know what I'm getting out of California. I know how to deal with a snake. Snake's a snake. You're being all chummy, all Republican, and then now you're voting for the Bashir fella. What's up with that? We get up in Kentucky. Any of you Kentucky folk want to speak for your beloved state? In all seriousness, I don't know that Cameron was necessarily the best candidate, but I don't know that I can speak to that. He was the Trump-supported candidate. I was a little confused, and I love my my good friend and colleague Chris Hand, but I'm a little bit confused because Trump endorsed him. But then now we're calling him a squishy moderate. I'm talking about Cameron, of course. So which is it? Why would our boy endorse a squishy moderate for governor? There were several good candidates to take on Andy Beshear, but he comes out victorious in Kentucky. Secondarily, you had the vote in Ohio regarding abortion, codifying abortion in the Ohio Constitution. I'll speak on that a little later on in the program. Would love to hear from you on that front. David has been holding to talk about this awful shooting that happened yesterday in the Nashville area in Edge Hill, and the new information that we have today that the shooter was in custody last spring and was allowed to leave custody because he, quote, wasn't competent to stand trial. David, what's on your mind? What are your thoughts?
Hey, Matt. One thing I'm afraid of, and this is all opinionated, of course, when it comes to the court-appointed medical professionals, the DA, attorneys, I think we're in a place where everybody is afraid of what their record will look like when it's looked through a liberal lens. If you throw the book at a person of color, you're just contributing to mass incarceration, oppression, and all of the other things that they like to shout out. And so I think we're in a dangerous spot where people are afraid to properly do their jobs.
You know, I don't know if the color of the individual assailant has anything to do with it. Maybe it does. I know this. I know that the district attorney, Glenn Funk, has been consistently regarded as soft on criminal behavior of this regard. And he can hide behind the idea that he wasn't allowed to hold this individual because he was found to be mentally incompetent. I just find it difficult to believe that there was not some way to keep this man behind bars after he committed aggravated assault, and then you rearrested him on a theft charge where he was accused of carjacking an F-150, and that's felony auto theft, and he was released on bond in September, only to find a gun somehow and shoot and critically wound an 18-year-old girl. I just, whether it's a belief that you've got to get the percentages in the right place, if you know what I'm saying, David. I don't know what it is, but something needs to be done about it.
Well, Matt, we have DeBerry Special Needs Facility for the criminally insane. We have places in our jails. We have Middle Tennessee Mental Health. There are places for these individuals, so there's no excuse for what happened. But thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, David. I appreciate yours as well. 12:53. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Did you know that the Safe House over on 4th Avenue South is the largest Browning safe dealer in the United States of America? That makes them the largest Browning safe dealer in the world. That makes them the largest Browning safe dealer in the universe. Why is that? Because Browning has the best security and fire protection in the industry. That is why they are the best around, and that's why you will see a good amount of Brownings right there in stock at Nashville Safe House. Now, perhaps you're not in the market for a Browning. Maybe you're looking for a Rhino. Perhaps Fort Knox is your brand of choice, or Champion, or Superior. Whatever your safe might be, they have it at Nashville Safe House because they have more safes than anyone else in the United States of America. Over 600 on occasion in stock. Now, Mark always has over 500. But sometimes, we don't want to lie to you and say, oh, he's got 600, and then you go in there and you count, and he doesn't exactly have 600. let me tell you, he's got the safe for you. That's a lot of safes. That's a lot of selection. That's a lot of different sizes and a lot of different prices. He has the one for you. And you'll never pay sales tax on that gun safe. You just don't, because that's been reenacted in the state of Tennessee, and we're proud of that. And thank you to Governor Lee and the rest of the General Assembly for doing so. Go talk to Mark and his team at Nashville Safe House. They can help you out. Whether it's a jewelry safe, a gun safe, or a corporate safe, or a vault door, they've got it all at Nashville Safe House. NashvilleSafeHouse.com or on the road. 4th Avenue South across from City Cemetery. It's Nashville Safe House. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is the Matt Murphy Radio Show underway for the second hour of the proceedings today. It's 1:04. Thank you for being here on this Wednesday, November 8th. It's our episode 451. We appreciate you. We're juggling a number of balls here in the studio, one of which is obviously the election results happening in Kentucky, our neighbor to the north. I asked and received several calls from those of you in Kentucky to try to explain to me what exactly when I'm confused. I don't know enough to know what creates a state that will vote for Rand Paul and Andy Beshear. I don't understand that.
And Mitch McConnell.
Throw him in the mix. So you have the most libertarian member of the United States Congress, the most establishment Washingtonized Republican in the United States Congress, and then a Democrat. All elected statewide in Kentucky. I don't pretend to understand. I mean, some of you are joking around that Kentucky's been confused on these types of things since 1862. I imagine that's right, because Kentucky couldn't figure out where they were, even in the Civil War, right? Weren't they one of those that they were just, we just don't want to be involved in any of this?
Can we be Switzerland?
No, you better pick. So we're dealing with that. We are also discussing this tragic case involving the shooting of an 18-year-old by the name of Jillian Ludwig. Just to reset this case, for those of you on the line or for those of you just joining us, yesterday there was a shooting that happened just outside of the Edge Hill. It was in the Edge Hill community where yesterday afternoon, Jillian Ludwig was walking on a track in the Edge Hill Community Memorial Gardens Park. She was shot in the head. Found about an hour later. Remains in extremely critical condition, and according to authorities, she is not expected to survive. Through surveillance video and other methods, the Metro Nashville Police Department announced an arrest in the case of a 29-year-old who is charged in the critical shooting of the Belmont freshman. Nashville District Attorney Glenn Funk issued a statement saying Shaquille Taylor had been released from custody earlier this year after 3 court-appointed doctors found him incompetent to stand trial. Taylor had been charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon in April of 2023. I'm endeavoring to figure out the details of that case as we speak. According to DA Funk, because doctors did not find Mr. Taylor met the standards for involuntary commitment, he was released May 19th, 2023. So they found him incompetent to stand trial. The charges were dismissed. And then they let him go. So he committed, we believe, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, went into the system, walked right back out of the system only to commit crimes again. Not just the suspected shooting of an 18-year-old Belmont freshman, but also in September, he was arrested for the theft of an F-150 pickup truck, charged with felony auto theft, and then released on a $20,000 bond. Police say that he never showed up for court. He was scheduled to be in court last week, never showed up. Of course he didn't. Why would he? And what baffles me even further is that now that he has been put in jail, charged with the critical shooting of this freshman, probably if God forbid, I mean, I pray for a miracle, but the expectation is she's not going to survive the head trauma. He'll be charged with murder, and there's still a $280,000 bond set for him. Why are you setting any sort of bond for him? All right, so that story's on the docket as well. On the back burner, which we're about to pull to the front burner, and I hope that we get commentary on all of these things from our next guest. Also on the burner is whether or not our General Assembly will take up the possibility of not accepting federal education money, considering the numbers of strings that are often attached with that federal money. I applaud this state in concept. I've not seen any of the details, but the concept of turning down federal money, particularly when our federal government is overspending to the tune of $2 trillion a year, is so important. It is time that states say no. We beg of you, federal government, to be more physically disciplined with our tax dollars. And as a demonstration of our determination to do just that, we can make our education system work without that money. I don't know where we are on that, but I know who does. And his name is Scott Sapicki. And Representative Sapicki, You know, there aren't many guests that get it. I mean, Jay St. Clair and you. I mean, that's
Wow.
it. So
Cameron doesn't even get one.
No, even Cameron Smith doesn't get a theme song. But Scott Sapicki, he's around enough that he does. Hello, Scott. How are
you doing? It seems like when I played for the Sounds, that's my walk-up music right there to the plate. Thanks, Bell. Appreciate it.
You know, I oftentimes forget that you played ball.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
He gave me one of his baseball cards.
That's right, he did. Did I get one?
No, he just gives them to the cool people.
It's a nice tie, by the way. If you're watching on Super Talk TV, what a great tie he's wearing.
Thank you.
All right. I want to start here because I think the education piece is a little more detailed piece. You heard me detail this story. I mean, absolute tragedy. A young lady, 18 years of age, Belmont freshman, in critical condition, not expected to survive. And here's what the DA said about the situation involving this individual. Quote, this nearly impossible standard, that's what the law is regarding involuntary incarceration, impacts public safety. The law must be altered to accurately balance individual needs with public safety. At the same time, Tennessee must provide more beds and staffing resources to handle dangerous individuals. So he's saying that he was stuck, nothing he could do. That's DA Funk, and that the General Assembly needs to help him in certain aspects of a case like this. What say you?
Well, I think the second part of that about having more beds and facilities for these individuals with mental health issues, I think that's something that we tried to address in the special session, and I think that'll come back up when we get back in the normal session coming up in January 9th. I think we're going to have to look across the state of Tennessee of the availability of beds. Now, maybe the availability of the beds had something to do with that 3-doctor panel saying he's not able to be committed. I would be willing to ask and beg DA Funk to come before the General Assembly and plead his case. And I'm sure that, he would carry some weight of trying to make Davidson and Nashville for that, and the state of Tennessee, a safer place to be. Sometimes it's easier to sit back and just throw things at the General Assembly instead of stepping up to the microphone and pleading your case. But I find it hard to believe, I really do, that an individual was not deemed capable to stand trial for a crime, but then also not able to be committed to address the mental.
Doesn't make any sense to me.
It makes no sense. So I think there's probably some nuggets of information. And normally when you come before the General Assembly, especially in criminal justice, Chairman Doggett and Chairman Halsey will get down into the details and find out exactly what the problem is. But I think the General Assembly, as long as we don't start trampling on people's rights, is more than willing to look at providing additional facilities and additional help for people. We've done it since I've been up there.
Well, and if this is a legitimate loophole, and I don't know, I take the DA's words at face value. Mm-hmm. But if it's a legitimate loophole, then we need to do something to close this loophole. In other words, if there's a gap between not able to stand trial versus involuntary commitment, then we need to close that gap.
Correct. There needs to be some kind of symmetry there, that if you're telling me you're incapable of standing trial, then there has to be enough of a mental health issue that deems you a danger to society.
Right. If you're and I don't mean to oversimplify it, but if you're incapable of standing trial, the basic indication is you don't understand right from wrong.
Correct.
Well, if you don't understand right from wrong, then I would suggest that you are a danger to, especially considering the charges against you. You were charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon to begin with.
Right.
And I understand a charge is not a conviction, but that should be an indicator that you're going to be a danger to other people if you're released from incarceration.
Common sense.
It would make sense to me. But the real reason you're here is some of the activity going on surrounding education dollars. Obviously, you chair the committee. You get it. You're on top of these subject matters, whether it's curriculum and standards or funding. Where are we? What is the consideration on the table by the General Assembly?
So the one thing I want to make perfectly clear is that there's no discussion at the General Assembly level to reduce the amount of funding. It is to supplant the federal dollar. So basically, where's the check going to come from? Is it going to come from the feds, or is it going to come from the state of Tennessee? The same amount of money is still on the table. The question we're trying to answer is, if we write the check from Tennessee to Tennessee taxpayers, Is it going to lead our districts for better outcomes with our districts, better outcomes for our teachers, and better outcomes for our students? That's the main question. Does it give us the flexibility and autonomy, and here's the most important word, right? Creativity for our teachers to deliver the educational components to our students and get better results? We've had 5 meetings. Now, I'm not part of the committee, but I've been sitting in on them because I want to make sure I can understand where we're going with this. Yeah. And we've had 5 meetings, and we've talked about the restrictions from the federal government in funding and how it's all intertwined through USDA for food, Department of the Military for ROTC, Department of Human Services through health on the TANF funds that we use, Tennessee Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, and how that all ties in together, and whether or not, if we say cafeteria style, Matt, if we don't want to do this, we don't want to take the money for this, are there repercussions from the federal government on everything else? Can we choose cafeteria style what we want to do and not do or comply with? And then the other thing is,
I feel like I know what the federal government's going to say to that, by the way.
No.
Yeah.
But the other question that's kind of got stirring in the back of my mind, and I'll give you for instance, in grades 3 through 12, we are required, if we take the federal money, to test math and English language arts every year. Science is every 3 years, with a maximum of no more than 3 tests per school year. Okay? Well, let me tell you something. Our middle schoolers take about 11 to 14 tests a year. So now it's got me looking at, okay, let's look internally in our own house. How, if we know that this is the guidelines from the feds for testing, what kind of burdens are we putting on top of the students at the state level? And then what kind of burdens are the districts putting on at their level in the moniker of trying to collect data to see if our kids are on track?
So you're suggesting that the possibility exists that we're over-testing?
Possibly. I mean, when you're taking 11 to 14 tests a year in 7th grade?
No, I agree. I get it, certainly. So what do you say to those who say, wait a minute, this is free money, right? The federal government
is no free money.
Well, I know what I would say. I'm about to figure out what you're going to say. This is free money. Yeah, sure, maybe there's a string or two attached to make sure that you're spending the money appropriately, but why would you turn down free money from the federal government to supplement? Because, if you lose that funding source, you got to come up with it from somewhere else. That money comes from somewhere. That's money that could be spent on other programs or projects. So why would you turn that money down? What do you say to that?
Well, very simply, is our job is to always look at trying to make the educational system better for our students. Are there barriers in place from the federal government by saying, yes, we'll take this money, that create barriers in the classroom for student success, that create barriers in the classroom for our teachers' success? The name of the game in education is, after 13 years, K through 12, after 13 years, to have a student that graduates that can read, write, do math, understand science, understand social studies and civics, so that they can function in our society to determine whether or not they're going to go to a community college, a TCAT center, a 4-year college, or join the military. That's the job of us. We're not doing that right now. And so what we need to look at, and what this committee is looking at, is, are there barriers in place right now that are preventing that from happening? If there are, we have to clear those barriers.
See, and I believe the question, and I ask it in the spirit of a lot of people that perhaps are thinking it while they listen to us talk about the possibility that the state of Tennessee would turn down federal dollars to gain more control over the education and the course of education of our young people in Tennessee.
Or more freedom.
Sure. All right, control of freedom. Sure. I think we've become far too money-focused in our conversations about education. And I said for years in the state of Alabama, because in Alabama, I think the funding mechanism in the 20 years I was there, it went from about $3 billion to like $8 billion. So it increased by $5 billion. Did not see any appreciable increase in math scores, in English, whatever. And when people would call me and say, we need to fund education more appropriately, I say, well, just tell me what amount of money. What amount of money per pupil is going to guarantee me A's?
Yes.
What amount of money is going to guarantee me B's? Let's start there. If it's all about money and funding mechanisms, Okay, I'm willing to have that conversation. And they can never answer the question,
Well,
of course.
You hear crickets.
Right.
Because it's called my dad taught me a long time ago, it's called a score, right? If I give you X, what will you give me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I give you more of X, what will you give me? So if you're telling me for every student in the state of Tennessee to be at 100% literacy rate, and you'll guarantee me that, what's the cost?
I'm willing to talk.
But nobody's going to tell me that. Just give us more money. And by the way, we've given them more money. I've been up there for 5 years, Matt. I've sat on education committee every year. I've looked at the budget in education every year. It's gone up almost $4 billion in 5 years.
In 5 years.
5 years. So don't tell me we're not dumping money into education. We are hemorrhaging money in education trying to figure out this combination, right? What we need to figure out is, are there any barriers to success that are there because of the federal money? That's what this group's trying to figure out. And if there are, then they make a recommendation to the General Assembly and say, here are the hindrances that we found that are prohibiting our students or our teachers from being the best they can be.
In a moment, while we have Scott Sapicki in studio with us, we have one more segment to go. We will ask him his thoughts about some of the latest information involving the Covenant School shooting. I'm sure he has some thoughts on that, and where the study committee is going with all of this, and if we expect any results coming up in the regular session in January. We'll do that momentarily. It's 1:20 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project is an organization that I'm so proud to be associated with. As a matter of fact, David Corley will be here tomorrow with Tuffy, by the way. Tuffy's having a birthday tomorrow. We got authority. No, don't shake your head. We got authority. We got the thumbs up on that. Tuffy is David's service animal. David is one of the key men over at the Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project. Started with Charlie so many years ago. The mission is simple, to help our veterans that help us so much and help our country and our world enjoy freedom and liberty, not just here at home but abroad as well in many parts of the rest of the world. They do so by helping reintegrate those veterans back into civilian life after service. They identify partnerships with organizations that they believe in, and those organizations can assist our veterans in so many different ways. I want you to go over to the CharlieDanielsJourneyHomeProject.org and give as you can. More importantly, and one thing that David wanted to make sure that I mentioned when I talked about the Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project is if you have an opportunity today, tomorrow, into this weekend, and every day of the year, if you see a veteran, thank a veteran for their service to the United States of America and the globe. And I encourage you to go to the CharlieDanielsJourneyHomeProject.org. Did you get me on TV sneezing? Did you? That's great. That's great. You get my back there, Bill. Okay. 125 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I promise I'll get to Frederick and what is that? Marisa? Did I say that right? Marisa? In just a moment, I want to finish up with our good friend Representative Scott Zapicki in moments. We'll get to the bottom of the hour, and then we'll get your calls momentarily. I asked Bel K that because on Super Talk TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, join us on Super Talk TV and chime in on the F&M Bank chat line. I had a little bit of a sneezing fit right before we came back from break, and I imagined that Bell got me on camera sneezing, and he did. Scott, if I had to guess, I don't want to presume. I don't want to presume where we are in the process, so I'll just let you tell us. Study committee is ongoing. You're sitting in on study committee, and that committee's mission statement is to examine the economic feasibility of moving forward in this regard and the impact on educational opportunities for Tennessee children. Do I have it right?
100%.
Where are we, and do you think this will lead to any legislation this session coming up in January, or is this kind of a preliminary look building for further down the road?
So from listening to Chairman Moody and Chairman Lumberg, I think we thought this was possible to do in maybe 6, 7, 8 meetings, and this is becoming something that's really, really big. And the information that's coming down is so intertwined and convoluted that you have someone come in on one day, and then the next day you get another piece of testimony that is contradictory to what you heard the day before. And so I think what you're going to see is, my gut feeling is, this will go on. I would say that probably till we get back into session, and we'll continue on a little bit more. I don't know if this group will stay together or will be transitioning to the Senate and House education committees, but I think you'll get probably some type of recommendation. And what the recommendation would be is, we need more information, and continue that on as we go through the next session.
If not this lift, do you expect that there will be conversations regarding changing the way that our young people go to schools regarding a voucher system in the general?
Well, you're full of big ones today, aren't you? Yes, Governor
That's
Lee.
the hard questions there.
Yeah, you do. Governor Lee has talked about, and Chairman White has talked about, expanding the state voucher plan from 3. It was first 2 counties, and then we added Knox, and now there's a proposal possibly it's going to come forward to expand it to all 95 counties. That's a heavy lift.
In 2 minutes or less, because that's what we have. I'm, a bumpkin that just came in from the sticks, which, technically coming from Alabama, that could be said about me. What is a voucher system? How does that change educational opportunities for parents of young children in the Tennessee system?
Well, the theory behind it is, if you have a child that is going to X school that is grossly underperforming and not helping your student at all, just because of your address and your zip code, your student is trapped there. And so what the voucher system does is it identifies those failing schools, and it gives the parents the ability to send their kid to a better school, on quote, air quotes there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Through the grading system, through the evaluation system of the state, through word of mouth. And so what the voucher system does is allows that opportunity for seeking a better opportunity for your children.
Well, and it infuses, to me, and my understanding of it, just more globally, not in the state of Tennessee, is that it helps us infuse healthy and good competition within the system itself. I always, if I'm, out and about and talking about, any variety of issues, I use this example. You can steal this from me, Sapicki.
Okay.
So if I told you that based on where you live in Murray County, that you have to go to one grocery store to get your bread. This is the grocery store you have to go to get your bread. And because of where you live, that's the grocery store that you get your bread from. There'll always be bread there, but that's where you have to go. And anyone around you has to go to the same place. And the grocery store knows that too. Do you think the bread in that grocery store is going to get better or worse?
Worse.
Of course.
Right.
Why don't you two think of the poor teachers' unions?
Are the teachers' unions an impediment to this level of change? I would think they would be.
They are. But I don't think that the teachers' unions represent the bulk of the teachers in Tennessee. I think overwhelmingly, if you poll public opinion on this, public opinion overwhelmingly supports school choice. giving parents the option to choose what's the best option for their kids. One of the things we try to do in the General Assembly is we try to make our public schools and give them the opportunity to be the best they can be through funding, right? And like I said, we've increased funding massively in the state of Tennessee over the last 5 years.
You don't believe money's a problem?
No, normally it never is. It is the people doing the job that you got to get the best you can find. And that's why Governor Lee in the General Assembly, we bumped the starting pay for teachers up to $50,000 to create more competition for those jobs.
This great response from 5035 on the Super Talk text line. I don't think any amount of money is going to make a difference until parents get more involved with the education of their child.
Do you know one of the biggest problems I'm hearing from kindergarten teachers right now? You ready for this one? 4 and 5-year-olds are showing up in diapers. Think about that.
It's a larger problem than public education.
It is.
That's what we're dealing with.
And it's our society. And there's no magic bullet bill for that. It is parents. And parents, I know you don't want to hear this.
What, so kindergarten teachers are now potty training?
Yeah.
That's frightening.
Yeah.
Just some breaking news coming here from the newsroom. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem.
This is the breaking. House Republicans are going to subpoena Hunter and James Biden as their impeachment inquiry does ramp back up.
Well, that's great news.
I didn't know about that.
I love that. Yeah. So, but that's why look at there. That's why Mac Morey jumps in with breaking news, because Scott Sabicki and Matt Murphy go, really? We didn't know that.
So we're bringing Hunter to Tennessee?
Well, we're bringing Hunter to Washington, D.C.
Well, he didn't clarify that.
Oh, I see. Oh, he was gigging you.
Oh, that's what was going on.
I missed it too.
Wow.
I like that. So Biggie's with the little gig of
A
Maury.
little spicy.
Yeah.
Education chairman are cerebral.
He learns that you're a Chiefs fan, and this is what you get.
Taylor Swift fan, right?
Swifty.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, no.
I'm just going to shake it off.
Hey, there he goes. We're giving Sapicki some bad blood.
No. You could keep that trash for the hand show, would you? No, don't bring that over here with me. You either, Sapicki. Scott, thank you for the update in all sincerity. Obviously, it's not normally a time that we talk about these types of things, but I want to make sure that we keep the audience up to date with the goings-on of the committee hearings, some of the behind-the-scenes activity that goes on in advance of the general session.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
We have got to have the manifesto and the toxicology report.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, and I'll give you 30 seconds on this. So 3 pages. Some say, hey, this is taken out of context, to which I say, well, then redact what you need to redact and give us the rest. I saw you on the tube yesterday, I believe it was, commenting on this. Just give us your thoughts on it again.
We have got to have, if you want us to craft legislation to help prevent this, right? Not stop it, but to help prevent it, right? We have got to have that manifesto. We got to have the toxicology report, and we must have testimony from experts on looking into the mind of this individual and to help us understand what we're looking at. I understand. I don't understand the horror of losing a child. But if we can glean some good from this, right, that we can help prevent this in the future, we have to do it.
Well spoken, succinctly spoken. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
It's Representative Scott Sapicki. We're back in a moment, as promised. We'll get to your calls right after this on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy, and I want to spend a moment talking to you about your food, right? I mean, that's a personal matter. I mean, what you eat on a regular basis. But if I told you that I had a way for you to up that food game, you can eat the same great things. You can eat that delicious cut of salmon or those incredible vegetables that you get from the local market or wherever you get them. But you can up the food game by upping your spice game. You up your spice game at Savory Spice. Friends, you don't have to know how to cook to go to Savory Spice and up that food game. Holly and David will take you by your hands. Don't you worry. They'll open your mouth and they'll feed you baby birds with delicious spice blends that are pre-made and ready to go. They've got racks and racks and racks of different soups and stews and, yes, chili mixes, all available at Savory Spice. So great for the fall and winter season. So good. And good for you, too. We just had taco soup. And we transposed the beef for turkey, ground turkey, and it was delicious and good for us, too. Savory Spice can do it for you. 2 locations to serve you. One's in L&L Market in Nashville on Charlotte Pike. The other's in Franklin, just off the square next to Grace Pharmacy. Stop by in, smell the smells, enjoy the sights, and buy the incredible spices that will up your food game by upping your spice game. And you up your spice game at Savory Spice. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. All right. Big story of the day. I mean, obviously, the aftermath of the elections yesterday ongoing. We will discuss in earnest with Cameron Smith what he makes his analysis of some of the votes from yesterday. And we'll get into a robust discussion about where abortion falls into all of this. I'm not afraid of that talk, and you should not be either. We will talk with you about, on the phones, about the governor's election in Kentucky. I asked several of you from Kentucky to help me understand the appeal of Governor Beshear, and Frederick has done just that. And Marisa will get to you in just a moment. Frederick, good afternoon. Welcome in, sir. Thanks for holding.
Hey, how you doing, Matt?
I'm well. Are you you're up from Kentucky way?
Yes. I'm almost 65 years old, so I've seen a lot in Kentucky, and I'll make a long story short. Kentucky is a very tight-knitted state. What it is everybody in Kentucky, or the biggest portion of them, have either ate at the same table or they know each other. So everybody in Kentucky works together. That's a big thing. It don't matter where you hold a Democrat or Republican name or whatever. Everybody works together here. And the second thing is Rand Paul, he helped out the inmates when they go to prison and they get out. He helps them try to better themselves, get their civil rights back, and be able to vote and get jobs and things of that nature. Steve Beshear, doing an investigation on the industry here. He has built a large coalition of factories. He's bringing the factories in, the jobs. I see a lot of young people from Tennessee, California, Texas. They're coming in from everywhere to Kentucky just to go to work. Mitch McConnell, he will work across the aisle and try to help out in every way. And last but not least, see, Kentucky is what's called somewhat of a Bible Belt. And what I mean by that, the identity of that is we believe in God first, family, and then country. See, a lot of people still have that, that thing first of about the country being first. See, God has to be first, period, in order for anything else to work. That's what I got.
Frederick, I'm glad you called, and I'm glad you talked to us about it. I'm not going to challenge Frederick on his logic there, but Andy Beshear is a different kind of Democrat, in as much as he supports certain policies that would put God front and center above even government. Maybe so. Marisa is next, talking Kentucky. Hey, Marisa, how are you?
Hey, Matt. Hey, I'm gonna have to. I wish that were true of Andy Beshear. But
well, I mean, I'm a little confused, but I'm not going to begrudge him his position on it. What's yours? What do you make of the governor?
I don't like him. He was a tyrant under COVID. He would not let our legislature meet during the COVID time. because the only ones who could call legislation in was the governor, and he wouldn't do it. So he was our king for, there for about a year. But it's the teachers. Your representative was talking earlier about teachers unions, and it's the teachers unions that keep getting him elected. And with all of the disasters and things that we've had in Kentucky, been a lot of money flowing and stuff. And if you look on the state map at the election results, you'll see that most of it is red, but it's those pockets. It's Louisville, it's Lexington, it's Covington, it's Bowling Green, and then some of the hard-hit eastern Kentucky places where the disaster relief money was flowing in. That's what got him elected, but primarily the teachers. Some people just think he hung the moon, and he's awful. With Mitch McConnell, for years, he runs, unchallenged. So you either have to vote for Mitch McConnell or you have to vote for the Democrat, because nobody will run against him. That's why he's still in office, is because nobody will challenge him. And so we have no choice.
Right.
He needs to go. He's needed to go for years. But
I don't pretend to know enough about the race that was just run in the governor's office, but what can you tell me about Daniel Cameron? I admit my ignorance on this, but was he a good candidate in your estimation?
I think he was. He challenged with all of the COVID. He's been fighting Bashir all along with the COVID mandates and the things that he was keeping in place long after it was unnecessary. Andy shut the churches down initially, and a lot of things in Kentucky have gone to court to say, okay, no, he can't do that. But it was after the fact, that the court proceedings come out and the rulings are made. The abortion issue was a big issue. The transgendered thing is a huge issue. And the teachers, the teachers have Andy in their pocket, the teachers unions, and it's really the teachers that that are just all about Governor Bashir.
I read up this morning, Marisa, on some of his COVID-19 policies, and I was surprised, and I thought I had heard it all regarding some of the policies. I did not know that, for example, in 2020, that Bashir signed an executive order and he released inmates from prison.
Yeah, he's just awful. I mean, he and Biden are just hand in hand. But when you get, you all talk a lot about how, there's Tennessee and how Tennessee goes, and then there's how Nashville and Memphis and Knoxville
That's right.
goes.
Same deal up there.
Well, that's our problem here is, like I say, it's interesting if you get the chance, have somebody pull up the governor race results, and the majority of the state, it's just red, and then there's like these pockets, and the pockets are the big cities.
I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at it, and I'm assuming the bluest. I'm looking at. There's virtually all red on the southern side. There's one county on the south. I don't know, but it looks. I don't know where that would be. Bowling Green, probably.
That is. It's Bowling Green.
And then up, I see Louisville right there in the center of the state, in the northern portion of the state. That's bright blue. What's the other one? Frankfort?
Yeah, Newport, Covington, Ashland.
So these metropolitan, you don't have enough population in the rural areas to counter the urban Democrat vote, in other words.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I appreciate the analysis. Thank you, Marisa, for the telephone call from Kentucky. Speaking of Bowling Green, here's John, who wants to talk about the re-election of Andy Bashir. Hey, John.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. Hope you are.
Oh, yeah. Well, sort of. Biggest problem with yesterday is still voter turnout, okay? Daniel Cameron could have been elected governor if the voter turnout would have been there. We as Republicans got real lazy. I'm sorry. I'm an independent, but I lean Republican. We got real lazy, okay? And we seem to forget what Bashir did to us during COVID. Now, thank God that I work in Tennessee and only live in Kentucky. Because if I had been working in Kentucky when the COVID hit, I probably would have been out of a job. Okay, so we don't have anybody to blame for this past election. And Daniel Cameron was an excellent candidate. Strong Second Amendment, strong family values, the whole 9 yards. Okay, he would have been a great governor. We have nobody to blame but ourselves. That's the bottom line.
You know, Bashir comes off to me as kind of an old school, almost Roosevelt Democrat.
Correct. Yes, he does.
And I don't say that necessarily as a positive or a negative. It's just an observation. So, and the things that you're saying, John and Marissa, before you, seem to confirm that he's right on some of these basic issues like gun rights, for example.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's very pro-government on other issues like the government's ability to interfere during COVID-19. I hear what you're saying. I do not believe for a second, as some have floated the theory that it was a stolen election in Kentucky. Come on, man. I've seen it online. Every time you don't get the result that you want to get does not mean that it's a stolen election, okay? Here's what I've noticed, and here's what I'll tell you. Absent the stealing, and don't get me wrong, I know that there are shenanigans that are going on. I know that there are already prepared shenanigans for the 2024 election cycle. And we must fight against said shenanigans, which is a preferred word of the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 W. I love shenanigans.
Shenanigans.
Shenanigans! Shenanigans can lead to a quagmire.
Oh, you don't want that.
And you don't want a quagmire.
No.
I intend to not on to have you fun ball. You're getting in trouble. The shenanigans are going to exist, and we need to fight against them. But more importantly, typically Republicans are older. There's an overlay. You know, what's her name? Kamala Harris loves those Venn diagrams. Well, if you consider, voters of any variety of different age subsets, there's great overlap amongst Republicans and Democrats, but Republicans tend to be older than Democrats. When you're young and you're a scullamush, what was the quote from Winston Churchill? If you are under 30 and conservative, you do not have a heart. If you are over 30 and liberal, you do not have a brain, right? Meaning that your emotions take over in your formative years. You are young and idealistic. You think these problems can be solved by sunshine and unicorns and rainbows, and they cannot. And you learn that over time. We older folk, I include myself in your number, we older folk better get used to early voting. You either need to eliminate it or embrace it. Eliminate it or own it. Own it at the nursing homes. Own it at the assisted living facilities. Own it at the senior living facilities. Own it in your neighborhoods. Own it in your churches. Instead of expecting, as we have long expected, that people will handle their own business when it comes to getting to the polls on election day. One of the things that the left has done legally, forget the illegality, and I understand that matters. I understand it matters quite a bit. But legally, they have changed the rules of the game to benefit themselves. We either have to change the rules back to be neutral or take advantage of the rules as they exist. And that means embracing the idea of early voting. I don't like it. I don't want it. I wouldn't vote for it. I don't support it. But it is a reality. And we're getting our brains beaten in by early voting. And maybe we need to do something about it. It's 1:51. Chris, Greg, Guy, to you coming up. Cameron Smith coming up in the 2 o'clock hour to talk more robustly about the election results as we continue with the Murphy Show, episode 451 on Super Talk. The Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief is located in Franklin, really anywhere within the sound of my voice. If you're experiencing back pain, neck pain, knee pain, elbow pain, hip pain, whatever pain, pain anywhere, they can assist you at the Dr. Gill Center. Years ago, Dr. Gill recognized the need to expand the concepts of chiropractic care to less spinal in nature and even more soft tissue, which is why they have the red light therapy and the Class 5 laser, in addition to spinal decompression, because it pinpoints inflammation in the body, it reduces swelling, it accelerates healing, and it helps do all of this without the need for needles, without the need for pills, and certainly without the need for surgery. It's time to contact the Dr. Gill Center, don't you think? The Dr. Gill Center located in Franklin, ready for you. Call today for an appointment. Tell them that I sent you. Use my name, Matt Murphy, and use the 2 words pain relief. You get a special discount on your initial consultation when you say pain relief at the Dr. Gill Center. 615-882-4838. 615-882-4838. The Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief in Franklin.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. You often hear me talk about diversification in the investing process, but how do we diversify? Well, we look for things that move in dissimilar fashion historically. Some of those market areas might be really small companies or really large companies, or very growth-oriented companies or value-oriented companies. And one of the things that we find is that when we diversify between these various segments, we can reduce the volatility of the portfolio because they don't move in tandem with each other historically. Now, we can do that in U.S. markets, we can do that in international markets, and in emerging markets. And when we can dampen that volatility, we can help get ourselves a little bit of a better outcome as far as knowing what we might likely have in the future, or how we can take income from our investment portfolio. Now, we also want to add fixed income or bonds to the mix as well. Now, if we know that we need to do this, what's the best way to do it? Well, one of the things that we often teach is this concept of market efficiency. This won the Nobel Prize in economics as well. And it's the idea that if I'm investing in, let's say, small value stocks, if we look at professional managers and their ability to say, hey, should I have this stock or that one, and picking companies or areas of the market, we find that they typically get lower returns than the market does on its own. They just add expense and they can add a lot of volatility. One of the things we want to avoid is anything that can hurt your returns and increase your risk in the investing process. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
That's right. Shenanigans all afternoon long on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Not just to me. I mean, I'm engaged in shenanigans right now, but Brian Wilson gets involved in the shenanigans coming up in about an hour or so. We'll get back to your calls, trying to figure out what happened in Kentucky. You know what I think? I'm going to lay it right at the feet of young women. I think y'all think Andy Bashir's hot. That's what I think. I think y'all think Bashir's hot and you can't control yourself and you walk into the polls and, ooh, let's vote for the hottie. That's what's happening here. Prove me wrong. Don't tase me, bro. 159 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It's 2 o'clock. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Currently 84 degrees in Nashville, and the chance to see some showers. It doesn't come tonight, but tomorrow morning could have a stream of a few days in a row of wet showers. Complete weather forecast just a few minutes away. Starting in the nation's capital, the Republican-led House Oversight Committee is issuing subpoenas to several members of the president's family as it continues its impeachment inquiry. Stephen Portnoy.
The subpoenas target the president's son Hunter, his brother James, his daughters-in-law Hallie and Melissa, his sister-in-law Sarah, and others who are or have been close to them. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer says the panel will question these individuals about what he calls a record of evidence that shows how Joe Biden benefited from his family's business dealings. The White House says Republicans are, quote, trying to distract from their repeated failures to govern.
And right now in Tennessee, Channel 4 says that a woman was found dead this morning at the intersection of Fairfield Avenue and Green Street right before I-40. Metro Police say it was a 60-year-old woman that was killed in this hit-and-run crash. Officials are now trying to notify her family. Anyone with information has been asked to call Crime Stoppers. And air travel, it's getting worse if you judge current sentiments based on the number of consumer complaints. Alex Stone with the report.
Consumer complaints about the airlines nearly doubled in the first 3 months of this year compared to a year earlier and kept soaring in April and May, according to the U.S. Transportation Department, which is out with new figures. The department received almost 25,000 complaints about airline service just in the first 3 months of the year, up 88%. The department says it is investigating several U.S. airlines for possibly offering flight schedules that they're unlikely to be able to perform. Southwest Airlines has publicly said it is being investigated after its total system meltdown last December.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
So Veterans Day is coming up this weekend on November 11th, and that has me thinking about the Special Operators Transition Foundation. It's an organization that is designed to help leadership in business develop relationships with leaders in our veteran community, and put those two together. The Special Operators Transition Foundation provides veterans in a transition program where they can transition from top-tier special operations to business. With an elite veteran talent field like we have, there's no excuse for you business owners not to take advantage of SOTF. They were started in 2013. They launched, had their first few veterans complete the program in 2014. And since its inception, they have transitioned over 500 of our military special operations leaders, special forces, men and women, into successful work environment and into a new community. So the program includes personality and strength assessment, executive coaching, mentoring. It's all designed to move these folks into a life in civilian life. I want you to look up SOTF.org for more information. And what we beg of you is to give if you can. They're a 501c3 organization, obviously. Donations are what they are funded on. But also, if you're looking for hiring partners or if you want to host a transition workshop, they want to talk with you. Go to SOTF.org. That's SOTF.org. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. As promised, we'll get to each of your calls regarding the election night that was. Many different states holding their elections, including Kentucky, Virginia. That rolled over to the Democrats on both sides, the Senate and the House, flipped fully to Democrats. Of course, thankfully, we still have Glenn Youngkin up there as governor of Virginia. I say thankfully because I believe in a more conservative or libertarian form of government. We begin hour number 3 by welcoming in Cameron Smith. I'm trying to come up with a pithy, a witty name for our segment. I thought about the old, but see, I don't think we're far enough apart on so many of these issues that we could call it like, remember the old Crossfire? Are you too young to remember Crossfire?
I know
on
what
CNN?
you're talking about.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, mano a mano, and we're going after it on the issues, but we don't disagree on enough. It's not really Crossfire. I mean, we're mostly shooting in the same direction. Occasionally there's some random fire.
Just make the crowd happy and call it rhino hunting.
Well, okay then. It's rhino hunting.
See? You can't even say it with a straight face, but it's funny.
It's rhino hunting with Cameron.
Yeah.
On Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hello, Cameron Smith.
Hey, buddy.
How are you?
I'm well. We got a lot going on.
Where do you want to start?
I mean, elections maybe?
Yeah. What do you make of Kentucky? I don't know. I admit my ignorance. It took me a long time to work this out in my mind, way too long because of my pride, right? I was prideful, and I wanted to be knowledgeable about all things. And so you bring up certain things, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I know all about that, and I clearly don't. I've learned not to act like an expert in things you are not an expert on. And I don't know what happened in Kentucky. I have not followed this race enough to understand what happened in Kentucky.
So a couple of things. I worked for Jeff Davis when he was a congressman from northern Kentucky. And Kentucky is one of the weirdest places on the face of the earth politically because you have these county judge executives that have these little fiefdoms, and it's conservative, but it's not always Republican. Beshears is a good example of that. Like, he ran on a Kentucky family name that carried a lot of weight in the state, that he said, this isn't Republican, this isn't Democrat, this is about the future of Kentucky. Like, he was not running as a Biden Democrat and all this stuff.
It feels like the same type of stuff Zell Miller was saying in Georgia 15 or 20 years ago.
Of course.
Right.
I mean, it's very much that sort of blue dog, yellow dog vein of, I'm conservative, but I'm a Democrat. So I like to spend money, but all the woke stuff, probably not. And
it's like a Roosevelt Democrat.
Yeah.
Old school.
Yeah, and that's popular right now. It's too simple, and I've said it and I've thought about it. I'm like, this idea, well, Daniel Cameron was endorsed by Trump. The other statewide Republicans who won weren't. Like, I think it's more complicated than that. Bottom line is,
was Cameron a good candidate absent the endorsement? In other words, sometimes that endorsement pushes over. I mean, I think Pennsylvania, right? I mean, I'm not taking anything away from some of the shenanigans that went on in Pennsylvania. But that Senate race, the Fetterman-Oz race, I don't think you get that if you have McCormick on the Republican side.
You have a Republican.
You have a Republican senator that has won that race. And that is in part due to the Trump. And I'm not knocking Trump as a result of these endorsements. I'm trying to figure out Cameron.
I got a different take that I think is a way to kind of not knock Trump, but also tell the truth. If Daniel Cameron runs Glenn Youngkin's campaign, he could have won that race. He said anti-Joe Biden, Trump's my homeboy, and kind of went that route. And in Kentucky, that didn't work because Beshears was like, I'm here for you. I'm not just doing the national political narrative. Mm-hmm. I'm your guy. And so I think that's why he was successful, a known name in Kentucky. What I think we're seeing here, and this is what confuses people to death, is they say, well, look, Trump endorsed so-and-so, and they did super well. Well, what's happening is there's some areas, like most of Tennessee, where a Trump endorsement is golden and great. The Trump endorsement in other places is toxic. It's the same thing.
Cameron Smith with us for the better part of the hour. We'll take your telephone calls, 615-737-9986. Let me clean up a couple of things and get you some news. You got it in there. I'm going to go to you in just a second. Hang in there, McMorey. So, one, I mentioned Brian Wilson later on. Actually, Brian is out today, and Pamela Furr is in for Brian from 3 until 7 today and tomorrow, it's my understanding. Number two, we have some breaking news developments on the leak of documentation. Do you have this in there, McMorey? What do you got over there?
Yeah, this comes from Channel 4. Metro Nashville police have confirmed 7 officers have been placed on administrative assignment as the department continues its active investigation into who leaked 3 pages from the Covenant School shooter's writings.
Okay, so that's just a further development in that situation. Freddie O'Connell, the new mayor of Nashville, along with Chief John Drake, said that they would get to the bottom of the leak of the documentation. I haven't really talked about that aspect of the manifesto and the document leak, but I will say this. Had there been an orderly process by which at the end of the investigation they redact the information that needs to be redacted and then make available to the public per the open records laws of the state of Tennessee, that information that was desired by various media outlets on the front end, you would not have this happening on the back end. Can we live in a world where we allow government officials to leak information at their desire, even against what is department policy or against their prescribed job duties or against the law? No, of course not. No. So there has to be an investigation, and it looks like they're narrowing in on those involved in this situation. Your thoughts?
Yeah, my take on it is either something like that. I've said on Twitter, like, yes, I think that this, because there's no active investigation really, the shooter's dead. This is a government record now, and there's no current exception for this type of situation of a mass shooter or whatever we want to call that. I would advocate, as I've mentioned to you, of having a mechanism of review for these documents that involves more than just law enforcement, say the legislature or something like that, and saying, okay, we want to make a determination that way. But I get it. If folks say, nope, we don't want to enact a law that does that, it's a government record. The investigation's over. You can redact the private information, and then you got to release it.
And for me, and you and I got into a healthy back and forth on social media, on X, formerly known as Twitter, that one of the major reasons that we are told that this information doesn't need to be made available is because of the emotional impact that it'll have on the community, more specifically on the Covenant families. And I'm incredibly sensitive to that, but that doesn't change my position on any of this. I don't want to cause them, nor do I believe I can cause them, any more pain than they're already experiencing. I can't imagine the pain that they're experiencing. And I don't want to cause them any more pain.
Agreed.
Necessarily. But I do understand how free and open societies operate and how when you start closing down these doors, how that can lead to other things. Maybe not even in this case, but in future cases down the road. Let me clean this up real quick. So according to WSMV4, they independently reached out to the Metro Nashville Police Department, and those are our television partners over there, and confirmed that the investigation was obviously ongoing. Department spokesperson Don Aaron wrote SMV4 television, stating that, quote, 7 individuals are on administrative assignment to protect the integrity of the active progressing investigation. Aaron then went on to emphasize the administrative move was, quote, absolutely not punitive, and that out of fairness to the officers, the department would not be identifying them. According to Aaron, all 7 officers continue to have full police power as the investigation moves forward. And any further details on this will be released by the Metro Nashville Police Department. Metro Police have stated the images were not official crime scene photos, that the department was communicating with the Metro Department of Law to launch an investigation into the leak, and there was an indication that it was a violation of the law.
Yeah, it's an intentional leak.
Yeah, so if it's an intentional leak of this type of information, that there are some laws that have been violated. In seeing the photographs of the material, it looks like those photographs were taken on site. I don't know that.
I don't know.
So it to me, and speculation is when you have a void of information and you try to fill the void, but I think it's a fairly safe assumption, and I've heard from some of my sources at the Metro Nashville Police Department that there are some individuals that are frustrated with the pace of the case and frustrated with the nature of the information that's being shielded from the public, and because of that frustration, they kind of turned whistleblower.
Yeah, but man, you better make dang sure. Here's why. In a law enforcement situation, similar with the military, like we can talk about constitutional rights, but in those contexts, it's a very different standard of review in terms of what's permissible and what's not. Because
right, you signed on the bottom line.
Yes.
Right?
You cannot have, you couldn't get a fair trial, right? Because imagine you're an accused and the guy that has the custody of the evidence starts putting it out and commenting publicly, then you'd be like, wait a minute. Like, that's not how this works. So, that can't happen. Regardless of how you feel about this stuff, that part can't happen.
Once again, I believe that if this had been handled properly on the front end, you wouldn't have this on the back end, obviously. At the same time, you can't have this type of leakage going on within the department because, once again, this is not Joe Q. Citizen blowing the whistle on some dirty shenanigans going on at the Metro Nashville Police Department. This is apparently an employee of the police department who signs agreements saying, I'm going to protect the integrity of this, and I understand the law with regard to that, and I'm not going to provide information without proper approval for this or that or the
other.
And
a whistleblower, by definition, is exposing corruption or something internal, not just making a choice that I want to tell you about something.
Despite the fact that my superior officers tell me I'm not allowed to do that.
Right.
Chris has been holding in Kentucky. I asked for conversation about what's going on up there, and he has provided some of that. Hey, Chris, how are you?
I'm doing all right.
What's on your mind, Chris?
Well, I do not believe Daniel Cameron was a good candidate because he's shown where his allegiance lies to himself. He was the attorney general that was supposed to be handling the grand juries of LMPD officers over the Breonna Taylor shooting, and he completely sandbagged the grand jury investigation. If you want details of what I'm talking about, I can give them. But he chose himself and knew that as a black Republican, and let's be honest, Kentucky is a racist state, and that there is simply a lot of racism in the
Tell me more about that
area.
Yeah, tell me more about the racism that exists in Kentucky.
I mean, how many Klan meetings do you have to see? How many marches do you have to see?
Wait, there are Klan meetings?
Are you really going to pretend that this isn't true?
So the state, is racist.
Critical, but
so there are so many Klan. And I'm just talking with you, Chris. Just give me a second here. So there's so many Klan meetings, like Klan meetings every night, Klan meetings every week. There's so many Klan meetings that you can declare that Kentucky is a racist state.
Yeah, that's not what I said.
That's exactly what you said. You said Kentucky is not. You said everyone. No, you did. You said Kentucky is a racist state.
It is a racist state. It has a history of racism.
Okay.
There are frequently
so because
incidents
there
involving
are
man leaving flyers
Chris,
on college campuses.
Chris, because no one's denying that there's racism in America. But you're suggesting that because there are some racists in Kentucky, that makes Kentucky
no.
racist
What I'm
state.
saying is there are more racism going on.
Like
in
more than
Kentucky,
half? Like how many?
Tennessee,
Is there more
Virginia.
than 50%?
I don't have the numbers. I'm saying with regards to how it's treated, how vocal it
let me
is,
ask you
how
this.
public it
Okay,
is.
all right. Well, calm down. Let me ask you this, Chris, because this is very intriguing to me. So, would you say Kentucky is more or less racist than South Carolina?
I would have to say they're probably about the same.
Yet South Carolina elected a black senator.
That doesn't mean that they don't have a lot of racist groups and active.
So then what is your point with regard to the inability to elect Cameron, a black gubernatorial candidate, if you're saying that racists are willing to elect? I'll finish my sentence and I'll get to a period and then you can start, okay? So my suggestion is that if Kentucky is equal in its racism to South Carolina, and South Carolina was willing to elect statewide a black official to represent them in the United States Senate, how can you make the assertion that it is based on racism alone that Daniel Cameron was not elected as governor of Kentucky?
The low turnout in the more rural areas where there is more of a concentration of racism.
Okay. So the racist would not vote for the black guy.
I don't know that they wouldn't, but I'm saying that it would have made it more of a challenge. But that wasn't the crux of the point.
Do you live in Kentucky?
I do.
Is Attorney General an elected position up there?
Yes.
How did Cameron get elected AG?
I have no idea.
Well, maybe you should figure it out. I don't know.
Maybe they're bad racist.
Maybe they didn't know he's black.
I don't know. Yeah, that was weird.
It's so racist. None of the TV stations would put him in his own ads.
Well, look, that drives me insane when people are like, well, as you know, it's a racist this. I'm like, okay, based on what? Well, I just know in the rural areas, the racists. I mean, like, that's a lot of assuming. And
yeah,
I mean, we should call out racism where it exists, but the general, like, let's slap a sticker on it and blame that. Come on.
You know, I make no apologies as to how I reacted to the caller. But like Cameron said, when you call up and say, well, Cameron was a bad candidate because, Kentucky's a racist state. Whoa.
Hey, can I run through some of these issues and election results just so folks can kind of like chew on them for a second?
You can in a moment.
All right.
And Matt and Dan and David and a lot of people want to comment on the previous caller who feels like Kentucky's a racist state, and that's why, they elected the Democrat over there, and that's why they didn't elect the black guy. 222 on Super Talk 99. I mean, that's got to be tough if you're a racist, and, everybody knows that all Republicans are racist and all racists are Republicans, right? So if you're a racist and you want to go and vote Republican, but then the stupid Republicans pick the black guy, like, what do they expect? Dang it. Coin flip. It's 222 on Super Talk. All right, I'd like to tell you about my friends over at Brentwood Hearing Center. As some of you know, Brentwood Hearing Center is obviously committed to offering the most recent hearing device technology, and I've talked for some time now about the Phonak Paradise Life hearing aid. The Paradise Life hearing aid is the world's first completely waterproof hearing aid. Whether you're splashing about in the pool during the summer months, or maybe you're getting yard work done, or perhaps you're at the gym and you're exercising, doing a lot of sweating, the Paradise Life can help you hear well, and you don't have to worry about your hearing aid getting wet. Call them today at 615-377-0420 and schedule an appointment and learn more about Paradise Life, or more generally, learn about hearing device and the incredible technology that they have at Brentwood Hearing Center. Friends, most people, when they start losing their hearing, they wait years. You heard me correctly. Years before they do something about it. Don't be these people. Live a better life. That's why they say better hearing for a better life at Brentwood Hearing Center. 615-377-0420. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you.
Breaking news concerning the leaked 3 pages of the Covenant Shooters Manifesto, an arrest in California, and the news over in the war in Ukraine. That and more 30 minutes after the hour, 2 o'clock. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Also, racism on the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is 2:27.
It's a very racist show.
Jason writes in and says, I figured out why Cameron didn't win the election. You see, Tuesday nights, that's when you have the Klan meetings in Kentucky. So, you see, the caller also said that, like, the problem is the rural areas. Now, I guess maybe he's suggesting that the turnout would have been better for a white candidate, I guess.
I don't. So let me chew through these. Bashir got 52.5% of the vote. Cameron got 47.4%. I mean, that's not insignificant in Kentucky. We say a close race, but that's several points. I mean, they would have had to show out a lot more. You know, and some of these issues that were on the ballot that weren't just the race, I think do fuel some of these. Like, for example, in Ohio, the right to abortion got a yes vote of 56.6 to 43.4. Then that's a red state now. Let's not screw that up. Frankly, the Mississippi governor's race was closer than I would have thought. I mean, that was Reeves 51.7 to Presley 46.9. I mean, that's Mississippi.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd expect 35% Democratic vote, but those extra points up there, that's tighter than you like to see. Maybe it's the Presley name. The other one we're not talking about at all is Ohio marijuana legalization. 57% yes. 43% no. I mean, we need to start paying attention on some of these issues, because if we want to win in a year from now, we've got to talk about it.
I'm the libertarian in the group, right? Libertarian with a small L. I don't belong to Club Republican, and I'm not a conservative, and I don't claim to be.
Right.
And I've long argued that younger generation, more conservative-minded people do not care about the marijuana issue in the way that older conservatives or older Republicans do. They don't care about it. And if you want to bring them in on any number of other issues, then this cannot be a focus of emphasis for Republicans, whether you think it should be or not. Work on the law and order side of things. I mean, I understand that people will argue that it's a gateway to this or that or the other. I don't think California has fallen off the map. Although California has a ridiculous policy with regard to marijuana. Colorado, there are plenty of states that have done this. You cannot like the way that the world is going in regard to marijuana and still recognize that if you want to win elections and check boxes in other arenas,
it's just not something I care about that much. Like, am I going to go and get high if it's legal? No, I don't.
And by the way, in a state like Tennessee, where technically marijuana is illegal, I can go to the corner convenience store and buy THC gummies.
Yeah,
they're right behind the counter.
You can go downtown on Broadway any given week and get gummies that'll make you think you're part of the couch,
or just walk around and get a contact high.
Right. I mean, these are the type of things where it's like, do you really care? Well, yeah, I get it. Like, Grandpa cares and wants to fight the power and the potheads, but like, my point is, it regulate it like tobacco. I'm not going to go smoke cigarettes either. No, but like. If folks want to do that, oh, no, you got high and you drove 3 miles an hour. I mean, that's less scary to me than somebody that's really drunk. And I know that people don't like that point of view, but at a minimum, it shouldn't be a federal issue.
I'm sorry, I'm distracted at some of the super texters. They're so funny.
Are they still throwing Kentucky under the bus?
Yeah. Brad says, rural Kentucky, where they still have them Jim Eagle laws. They're not Jim Crow laws in Kentucky. They're Jim Eagle laws.
Jeez.
Matt Murphy is racist. One of his most passionate topics, NASCAR. Yeah. And there you go. You're outing me.
Man, this is such a shame on the political front, because Democrats right now are as weak as they've ever been. There is nothing about
it's frustrating.
The national Democratic brand is like woke eat kale while complaining about climate change. Like, that's what the brand is doing, and we're managing to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory here.
Well, I'm happy, if nothing else, today on the show we've established that all of you folk in Kentucky are a bunch of racist. 231 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. When we come back, we'll take more of your calls, and Cameron and I will delve into the other big topic of emphasis in Ohio, and that is the issue of abortion. Voters went to the polls, and you know what? Representative Republic. I mean, that's what it's all about. Voters get to vote on some of these referendum-type issues, and they voted in favor of galvanizing the right to abortion into their Constitution. We'll discuss it in just a moment. It is 2:32 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.232, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, 81 degrees in Nashville. Full weather forecast headed your way in 2 minutes. Some breaking news. 7 Metro police officers have been placed on administrative leave, according to Channel 4, as this investigation continues into who leaked 3 pages from the Covenant Shooters Manifesto. MNPD spokesperson Don Aaron made it clear that this move was, quote, absolutely not punitive. Aaron says that it's to protect the integrity of the still active investigation. The officers will not be identified out of respect to them. These 7 officials also maintain full police power. And in California, the county of L.A. will be paying out hundreds of thousands of dollars to a radio reporter who was violently arrested by the L.A. County Sheriff's Department in 2020 while covering a protest. Alex Stone.
Radio reporter Josie Wong was covering a protest in 2020 and used her phone to record deputies making an arrest. The deputies turned on her and arrested her violently and unlawfully. Wong was held overnight in jail. Anyone can record police who are working in public, and under California law, members of the media have unique access to areas that are closed to the public. Under a new settlement, the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press says L.A. County will pay Wong $700,000 in a settlement, and sheriff's deputies will be required to get training on press rights.
And despite results on the ground, G7 foreign ministers meeting in Japan say they'll keep supporting Ukraine for now. Here's Tom Rivers.
Grudgingly for some governments, more resources will be pledged to Kyiv in 2024. Secretary of State Blinken speaking in Tokyo.
Today, we also focused on our enduring support for Ukraine. The G7 has led the world in galvanizing and sustaining that support. And as we told Foreign Minister Kuleba today, Ukraine can count on us.
Despite massive combatant losses, Blinken states there's, quote, enduring support for Ukraine across the G7 to continue to win back territory.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
All right, friends, it's as simple as this. If you are a fella and you've lost your energy, your drive, and you're of a certain age, it could be your T levels. Do you know? Do you know what any of your levels are? Do you know what your cholesterol is? Do you know what your blood pressure is? I mean, do you know what the T levels are? If you don't, you need to, because numbers matter. If you're a lady and you've noticed that your guy has lost energy, motivation, or drive in any number of aspects of life, you know, working out in the yard or going to the gym or even, you know, more intimate settings, then it's time to get to the Tennessee Men's Clinic. They can help you. They will bring you in, give you a comprehensive examination. They're friendly folks. They will talk about your lifestyle and how you've lost a step or two. Then they will get some blood work from you. They will get results back that day, and they will give you a prescription for success with regard to getting your levels back up where they should be, getting back that energy and drive. And if they see everything is A-OK, they can identify maybe it's something else in your life. Maybe you're not getting enough sleep or snoring or whatever it might be. They're going to help you identify that and get you back to energetic life again at the Tennessee Men's Clinic. Go to TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for more information. 2 locations to serve you, one in Nashville, Midtown, or the other in Cool Springs in Franklin. Give them a call to schedule an appointment, 615-208-9090, 208-9090. You know, in the summertime months, I like to say that if it's hot and sweaty, call Jeff Eddy. In the wintertime, I like to remind you that if your heater's not ready, call Jeff Eddy. And efficient heating and cooling, I like to rhyme. Jeff Eddy likes to fix your heater, and he can do so for less money than you'll pay with the big boys or the other guys. It's a shame, but true, that oftentimes when a heating and air conditioning technician comes to your home, they're invested in upselling you on a new product. I get it. I mean, they make more money that way, but Jeff Eddy has made a commitment. It's in the mission statement of his profession and his company that he's not going to do that to you. He is the master of second opinions with regard to getting more life out of your unit. He understands that you're on a budget. He understands that putting in a heating unit is a lot of money for the average Tennessean, and he wants to avoid that if at all possible. Get maximum life out of your heater this winter with Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling. They're also, when the time comes, because frankly, there's a life cycle, he'll have to tell you at some point that your heater has gone kaput, or as I like to say, well, if your heater does that, they're a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric. They're an elite pro partner with Rheem. Go to efficienthvac.net. That's efficienthvac.net, or call 615-784-4424. If your heater has gone, call Jeff Eddy. 784-4424. Call today. All right, as promised, a bevy of your telephone calls. A lot of you wishing to opine on whether you believe Kentucky is a racist state or not. As one of our callers mentioned, let's see. Oh, look, 2213. Fall colors are out and the white sheets are on sale in Kentucky. See, that's just it's wrong.
I see what they did.
I see what they did there too, and it's just wrong. RFK Jr. is leading both Trump and Biden amongst young voters. Comments? Cameron.
Trump with young voters?
RFK Jr. is leading Trump and Biden amongst young voters. I don't know what demographics this caller's talking about.
Yeah.
I haven't seen those figures.
I would want to see that. Like RFK Jr., and I'm going to say this, is a weirdo. Like.
Oh, yeah.
Legit. And so if you're conservative or libertarian or whatever, he's still a weirdo.
I think a lot of people appreciate his clapback on the COVID-19 stuff because a lot of that was weird. But if you go a little further down that rabbit hole, I mean, this dude does not believe in any vaccines.
Right. Like polio.
He believes in body purity. And I understand the concern that the vaccine was called a vaccine. It wasn't really a vaccine because it really, I get all of that. But polio?
If you're running around being like, I'm one of the pure ones, that's kind of weird.
I don't want the measles, mumps, rubella. I don't want those things.
So I have a great aunt who had polio as a kid. And trust me, it ain't great.
It used to be a thing.
Yeah. And we eradicated it.
We did.
And so the idea that...
What are the mumps?
I don't know.
By the way. The fact that I don't know
is great.
Is great because we don't deal with it. Look, Mac Morey's back in the newsroom. He's gathering headlines as we speak. Bell K's behind the glass, capably produced. Either one of you, I give you $50 if you don't look it up. If you can tell me what the mumps are. Just specifically. What are the mumps?
Bumps.
Yeah, they're mushy bumps.
I had to get vaccinated for them.
Yeah.
See, nobody knows. That's the point.
Anybody that's vaccinated.
What about the rubella? Anybody on the rubella?
Isn't that like a pie?
Sounds like a pasta.
It's a delicious.
That's a rutabaga, but it's close.
I think you're thinking of a different kind of pie.
But this is the point. Like,
sure.
RFK Jr., no. Like, that was easy. Next.
I want to get, you want to do calls first, or you want to do, the abortion thing merits a longer form conversation. But I will suggest, just in an opening to the conversation, and I want to get your take, that conservatives and libertarians alike need to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because we are like of mind on a lot of issues, and I understand the position. I understand that many people believe that life begins at conception, and anything beyond that to destroy that life is murder.
Yep.
we've got to deal with this from a political perspective because a lot of people don't believe that from a religious perspective, and they go to the polls and they reflect that politically. And these two things are coming together in a way that's going to destroy Republicans in 2024, I fear.
You don't need to fear because it's true. And, I'm very pro-life. This is not coming from somebody that's saying, no, actually, we can have a very permissive policy on abortion. This is me saying just the political realities are there's a lot of people who disagree with us. They're probably in the majority. The sweet spot's basically a ban after 15 weeks. People can kind of say, okay, we don't like abortion on demand, but no abortion whatsoever. Mm-mm. And the truth is there are a lot of voters who would never say that publicly, that they're okay with, a 15-week ban, but they're going to vote that way. And that's the reality. That's what's happening at the polls. And I'm not asking people to compromise their beliefs. I'm simply saying the political realities in areas where you need to win the presidential election. Just look at Ohio. That's a red state who has a constitutional right to abortion now.
And I would argue as a small L libertarian that for the and it's a complex issue, and I don't want to do it in a way where people have the ability to make assumptions about where I'm at on this religiously. But I put God over government.
Sure.
In every aspect of my life. I put faith over force. And God saw fit to give us free will to devise a government among men that believe that we should live free of religious.
We don't have a theocracy.
We don't have a theocracy, right? So it's difficult to tell people that they have to set aside their very sincerely held religious beliefs for a moment to understand how some people are going to the polls and voting differently than they on an issue that they consider to be murder.
Yeah. And I believe, and I'll be very clear about my faith perspective on this. I do believe that God knit me together in my mother's womb. I believe that. If I look at the question of the biology here, I err on the side of caution. When does life begin? When does the soul attach to the cellular development? It's easy to say life begins at conception, but the truth is I'm erring on the side of caution. I'm saying that division of cells doesn't look like a person to start off with, but I'd rather err on the side of caution. I can see somebody saying, I don't think that we need to err on the side of caution because of the impact on the mother as a legitimate policy position, even though I might disagree with it. And the votes are telling us right now, I lose that argument.
Right.
Heavily.
And I also don't, while we're walking down the religious trail together, I don't fall into the trap of saying, well, you're stymieing the intent of the Lord with the birth of a child, and I believe in a God that sees all, knows all, and has an ability to understand these things on a level that you and I never possibly could. I have to put my faith in that there are some things that happen on earth that he or she will deal with in their time and in their way, and that a government that believes in freedom of choosing has to create some leeway that there are people that aren't religious in the United States of America that don't believe that life begins at conception, and you have to create or carve laws that are applicable to all of us,
right?
Not just the faithful of us. And so that's where you kind of fall back to the scientific argument of, hey, can we not all agree? I've long said about the issue of abortion that let's all agree that we can't kill a kid. Can we all agree on that?
Yes.
That we can't kill a kid, like a living, breathing child?
Yeah.
And can we all agree that it shouldn't be the government's job to determine whether or not I should use a condom if I'm having sexual relations?
I don't want a bureaucrat in there at that moment.
So let's start from here, and let's move toward the middle and see where we can find some level of common ground. And you identify that 15 to 20. That's kind of where we're at right
That's
now.
where the numbers are, because abortion on demand is not something that has majority support. Neither is an entire abortion ban. Those are sort of the extremes, and the bulk of the votes and sort of where people are in the country is in the middle. And I've said all along, my big fight was post-viability abortions. Like, if a child can exist outside of the mother, the idea of having an abortion at that point is intensely problematic for me, because that to me is equivalent to killing a child. I can see someone making the argument that prior to that point, and this is where it was for a long time in America, prior to that point, the government can't really intervene. That was what the standard was from Planned Parenthood v. Casey. And a lot of states are basically going to that, I think, and saying, well, actually, that's, we might tighten it up a little bit, but that's where I think a lot of folks are falling. And politically, this is going to be a chaos machine for Republicans.
And 0727 asks the very correct question: when do the rights of an individual still inside the womb begin?
Sure.
And that is the ultimate question.
Bingo.
And you're right. Answering that question will determine a lot about our political future in the United States of America.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you where I'm at on a faith-based perspective. I can walk through that comprehensive answer there, but I'm telling you that if we take a hard line on a federal ban on abortion, it is going to cause chaos from a political perspective.
Well, how do we decide it? We vote. Like, that's functionally what we do.
And that's what Ohio did. And for me, my argument was always that I believe enough in the American people, and I believe enough in the people of the various states that they will determine for themselves the future of their individual states, which are 50 separate experiments, that it was never the job of the federal government to make this determination across state lines. We got that with Dobbs. And then immediately those that were beside me arguing with me turned that into okay, now it's time to insist on a federal ban on all abortions, which is kind of the counter argument to the prohibition against a ban.
Yes.
Right?
Well, that was purely a base play. There's no way, like Nikki Haley pointed this out, she's like, they're lying to you. There's no way to move that through Congress. This is just, we know you like this, so we're going to tell you we want the thing. But it's not consistent with what we wanted with Dobbs.
And for those asking, hey, Matt, answer the question, here's how I would answer the question. Some of you will like it, some of you will not. Here's the deal. Obviously, I believe that constitutional rights are in place at the time of viability. Obviously. And I would be willing to pull that back to 15 weeks and tell you that I don't have a problem with saying that constitutional, I don't say 20 weeks, whatever you want to say. So that's where your swing is. I think most reasonable people would suggest that if the child is viable outside of the womb, that child has constitutional rights and rights to life and liberty and everything that comes with it. Somewhere between that viability and the moment of conception, that's where our argument is.
Well, and we lost the argument because we didn't go after the culture. I mean, let's be real clear about this. Like, for everybody that says, well, life begins at conception and that's just easy. Oh, you're going to take care of all those kids. We're going to make sure. Look, I've dealt with DCS. I know there's a lot of kids that aren't cared for. So it's real easy to take the political argument, but I get a little fiery when it's like, oh, you don't want this, but you don't want to take care of these kids. I got several thousand kids in DCS custody right now that need a home. So if you're going to tell me about life and you're not going to help out on the living, pipe down a little.
I am sorry for those we're not going to be able to get to. David and Todd and Matt, I apologize. We're simply out of time. And I appreciate all of your participation on the super text line, on the phone lines today. We love you, and we'll continue it. Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you.
We're Fighting Rhinos with Cameron Smith every Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. That's what I'm calling it now, and it's your fault. And we'll have a nice jazzy theme song. I think that's an elephant, but you get, that works too.
No one knows the sound that the rhino makes.
Stinky PU elephants in the room too. Pamela Furr's up for Brian Wilson, and she's coming up next on Super Talk. All right, friends, it is healthcare season. I call it that because it's open enrollment for many folks. And if it's open enrollment for you, or if you currently do not have your own health insurance, or if you're on COBRA, or if you have to pay for your own health insurance and you don't believe you're getting the best deal possible, or Fourth option, your employer coverage is just too expensive. I want you to call Pat Davis and yourhealthplanman.com. Yourhealthplanman.com, which is hard to say, but it's easy to operate once you get to the website. If you're looking for coverage, do not go online looking for quotes. You'll get endless telephone calls, and you don't know if these folks are shopping you in one particular system or if they have a variety of different choices that they can offer you. Well, I know that Pat Davis does. He chooses from a variety of different insurance providers and makes sure that your cost is low, your insurance needs are met. It is 30 to 60% lower in cost than Obamacare, and you pick. Manage your own insurance. Don't let the government do this for you. Go to yourhealthplanman.com. That's yourhealthplanman.com, or call 855-4PLAN-MAN. That's easy, right? 855-475-2662 or yourhealthplanman.com.